begin to
Welcome, my name is Fumbi Ogunbawo. Today on Patitos Gang, we look at the origin of the show as we take a trip down memory lane. We also honor some of the late members of the show. And you might see an empty chair in the midst of the gang, and that's because we're paying a tribute to people who have contributed immensely to Patitos Gang.
This is a solemn moment on Patitos Gang. Since the year 2000, save a break of nearly 2 years, Patitos Gang has been produced as a platform to have quality public conversation that could raise citizenry to new levels in our country. Whatever has been accomplished in these years have been on the back of some people who have made tremendous sacrifices in terms of their time and other resources. Today we remember that in this period we have lost 3 of the original members of Patitos Gang. Pini Jesse, Amadu Abubakar, Onukaba Adinoyi Ojo. We pay tribute to them today and use the opportunity of this tribute to talk about what Patitos Gang was designed to do, what its challenges have been, and how remarkable a privilege it has been to have had them as part of this journey in nation building. Perhaps it's appropriate, therefore, to talk about Patitos Gang and how it started, why it started, and where we were going. We make a point in this new Patitos Gang series of talking about the early days and making a very clear point about how this was not directly an imitation of Capital Gang in Washington or indeed of McLaughlin and Company, which were very similar kinds of programs about when we were starting to produce Patitos Gang. In a manner of speaking, we refer to this as a reality show gone production, if that jargon makes sense. But in the sense that in the early days, in the early 80s, I used to live in a part of town that was very convenient, a place in Surulere in Lagos called Eric Moore Close. There were a lot of very bright, intellectual, upwardly mobile types who lived in inner parts of Surulere, on Agboyin Avenue, for example, where Odisa Bokoba used to live, if he remembers, and around Ikate and those kinds of places. And where I lived was a remarkable, easy point to beat the go-slow. So while you wanted the go-slow to stop, or if you wanted to wait for the go-slow to stop, the most safe thing was to arrive at my home, and then we would spend some time just talking about the problems of Nigeria and how to fix it. This really was the making of Patitos Gang. And so many years later, as we began to think, how do we improve the quality of public conversation in Nigeria, where you can have polite but impassioned and reasoned, well-informed public conversation on issues that affect us as human beings, whether they are political, whether they are social, whether they are economic. And we thought also that it could provide an opportunity to educate a generation, because one of the themes being constant is entrepreneurship. It's about nation building. It's about strengthening institutions. This is to Onukaba Adinoyi Ojo, who died very sadly just a week after he and I had a conversation about a tribute to Amadu Abubakar and Pini Jesse. Coming back from the launch of the Obasanjo Presidential Library. And by irony, incidentally, a conversation in which we referred to some of the early episodes of Petito's Gang and how my personal troubles with General Olusegun Obasanjo came from the fact that on this show, the New Democracy of 1999 was described as Kabiyesi democracy. And for that, General Obasanjo, considered this the most terrible thing that ever happened to the human race, referring to this place as a terrorist organization, Petito's Gang, that is this. Petito's Gang. What are the memories? What do we recall about these many years of talking things up and talking things down and trying to ensure that this was a platform, really something often misunderstood, for any and everybody, different perspectives. There was no for or against, just an impassioned discussion of whatever it is, with people holding different views if they want to, expressing them as stoutly as they could. What are the memories? What are the things that we remember the most about Petito's Gang since 2000?
Well, I think the first thing is the novelty of a Socratic dialogue in our society. A dialogue where people come and express various ideas with passion, with conviction, and with as much candor as they could muster, given the limitations of the medium.
In Nigeria, were not good enough, and so he had to live out his days in America, which is really part of the issues that we were discussing on Petito's Gang. How can we get away from this? But Ahmadu Abubakar was the funniest of characters when the cameras went off. The things he said, many cannot be printed, and we had so much fun. The making was more important, actually, sometimes, than the output that people watch from home.
I think that was part of what made Petito Gang at start to be very unique. It came at the right time to fill a void in public discourse. You recall, shortly before Petito Gang came on board, there were limited television networks. The major part of the country was fed by federal national television. So Petito Gang provided private sector alternative viewpoints for society to express their views.
But what was interesting was that it was on both public and private channels.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the amazing things about Petito's Gang in its early days was that it was on the NTA network. And when we started, it was a 90-minute program, full 90 minutes. How people were able to stay awake through it. Today, I look back and say, this is really...
Because there was pent-up demand for alternative viewpoints.
It was 90 minutes. It was on the NTA network. It was on Channels Television. It was on AIT. It was on state channels. And so it was complete. You couldn't miss it. One of the experiences that I have had traveling around the world at some airports in California, LAX, again once in Philadelphia, but most interestingly, of all places, I'm walking on the streets of Melbourne, Australia. Wow. And somebody across the street shouts, "Petito's Gang!" And I thought, what? It is not possible. Who could be here? So, obviously, it must have had impact. It must have affected people.
Impact.
But I always ask myself,
It's interesting. One of the members, Dr. Onukaba Adinoyojo, as I reflect on his life and the life of Pini Jason, both of whom I worked with at various points, I find it ironical or some coincidence. Pini's book, it's called A Famished Road.
No, A Familiar Road.
A Familiar
Not
Road.
Famished.
Yes,
I knew something was that.
Sorry.
A Familiar Road. Yes.
And